Let's start with the question that matters more than almost anything else in retirement. Can you actually live on Social Security alone in 2026? Because on paper, the answer sounds less scary than it feels in real life. Social Security got a 2.8% cost of living adjustment for 2026. The average retired worker benefit for January 2026 is estimated at $2,071 a month. For a retired couple, both receiving benefits, the average is $3,208 a month. That sounds manageable for a lot of people, until the first subtraction hits. The standard Medicare Part B premium in 2026 is $202.90 a month per person, and the annual Part B deductible is $283. So for the average single retired worker, that $2,071 check immediately drops to about $1,868 before prescription drug coverage, supplemental insurance, rent, groceries, utilities, gas, or property taxes even enter the picture. For an average couple, two Part B premiums cut $3,208 down to about $2,802 before the rest of life starts billing them. And that is the real retirement story in 2026. It is not that Social Security failed to rise. It did rise. The problem is that the increase feels smaller once healthcare takes its slice. For the average retired worker, the COLA moved the monthly benefit from $2,015 to $2,071, which is an increase of $56. But Medicare Part B alone rose by $17.90 a month compared with 2025. In other words, before we even talk about groceries, housing, or insurance, roughly a third of the average monthly increase is already eaten up by Part B. That is why so many retirees feel as if they got a raise and a bill at the same time. And this matters because America is becoming an older country, fast. The US population aged 65 and over rose to 61.2 million in the latest census release, and older adults now outnumber children in 11 states. So this is not some niche problem affecting a tiny group of people on the margins.
This is becoming one of the central questions of American life, not just where retirees want to live, but where retirement is still mathematically possible. Now, before we go any further, I want to make one thing very clear. This is not a list of the prettiest states, the most luxurious states, or the states with the best beaches. This is a list about one thing: where a Social Security check has the best chance to stretch. That means I am looking mainly at cost of living, housing costs, property tax pressure, and whether the tax system punishes retirement income too aggressively. And there is one more caveat that matters. State averages can hide huge local differences. Merrick's cost of living rankings are built from participating cities and metro areas, not every zip code in every state. So they are useful for comparing states broadly, but they are not a substitute for checking a specific town. Still, as a starting point for retirees trying to avoid the most expensive parts of the country, these numbers are extremely useful. So with that in mind, here are 7 states where your Social Security check can realistically go further in 2026, at least compared with the national norm. The first state is Oklahoma, and if you care about pure arithmetic, it is hard to ignore. According to Merrick's 2025 annual average cost of living data, Oklahoma had the lowest overall cost of living index in the country at 84.7. Its housing index was just 68.8, which is one of the biggest reasons it lands at the top. Zillow's February 2026 data put the average Oklahoma home value at $216,242, far below the US average of $360,591. On top of that, Oklahoma allows Social Security benefits included in federal adjusted gross income to be subtracted on the state return, which makes the tax side friendlier than many people assume. The trade-off is obvious. Oklahoma is not selling retirees a coastal fantasy. It is selling them math.
Summers are hot, storms are real, and the state does not carry the romance of Florida or the Carolinas. But if the question is simply, where does a fixed income breathe easier? Oklahoma deserves to be near the top of the conversation. And that is what makes Oklahoma interesting. It is not aspirational in the way people talk about retirement at dinner parties. Nobody leans back in their chair and says, "My dream is to move to Oklahoma and save money on groceries." But retirement is not an Instagram post. It is a 12-month budget repeated year after year. If you have around $1,868 left after Part B and you are trying to protect that number, living in a state with the nation's lowest cost of living index matters more than branding. Oklahoma is what happens when the retirement conversation stops being emotional and starts being practical. The second state is Mississippi, and this is where the numbers get even more striking. Merrick ranked Mississippi second lowest in cost of living for 2025 at 86.0 overall, with a housing index of 71.6. Zillow's February 2026 data put the average home value in Mississippi at just $189,895, which is not just below the national average, it is dramatically below it. Mississippi also does not tax Social Security benefits, according to the State Department of Revenue, and Tax Foundation pegs its effective property tax rate on owner-occupied housing at 0.58%. So when people say a fixed income goes further in Mississippi, that is not vague folklore, there is a real numerical case behind it. But Mississippi is also a good reminder that cheapest and best are not always the same thing. A lower cost structure can make retirement more survivable, but it does not magically solve every other life issue. What Mississippi offers is room in the budget. It gives retirees a better chance of keeping housing, utilities, and everyday expenses from swallowing the check whole. That is enormously valuable.
But it also means the real retirement question becomes more personal. Are you trying to maximize scenery, amenities, and prestige? Or are you trying to make sure the month does not feel like a countdown to the next deposit? If it is the second one, Mississippi starts to look much more serious than people expect. The third state is Alabama, and Alabama may be one of the most underrated retirement math states in the country. Merrick put Alabama fourth lowest overall at 88.1, with a housing index of 71.2. Zillow's February 2026 data shows an average home value of $232,106, still comfortably below the national figure. Tax Foundation reports an effective property tax rate of just 0.36% on owner-occupied housing, one of the lowest rates in the country, and the Alabama Department of Revenue lists federal Social Security benefits as exempt from Alabama income taxation. That combination matters. A state does not need to be tax-free to be retirement-friendly. Sometimes it is enough to avoid hitting retirees on the two biggest pressure points, Social Security and the family home. What makes Alabama especially interesting is that it feels closer to the kind of retirement many people imagine when they think of the South. You can get warmer weather than much of the Midwest, access to the Gulf if you want it, and a lower tax burden on the home than in a lot of more heavily hyped retirement states. Alabama is not free of trade-offs, of course, no place is. But if you are looking for a state where Social Security is not automatically fighting against the housing market every single month, Alabama has a very solid case. In retirement, a low property tax rate is not exciting, but it is the kind of boring advantage that compounds year after year. The fourth state is Arkansas, and Arkansas is one of the strongest examples of why retirees should never look at one number alone.
Merrick ranked Arkansas eighth lowest in cost of living at 90.1, with a housing index of 78.8 and a healthcare cost index of 87.3, both below the national average. Zillow put the average Arkansas home value at $219,754 in February 2026. Tax Foundation lists Arkansas's effective property tax rate at 0.53%. And official Arkansas tax exemption materials identify Social Security payments as excluded from gross income for state income tax purposes. So Arkansas is not just cheap on one front, it is relatively manageable across several fronts at the same time. This matters because many retirees make the mistake of chasing one headline number. They move somewhere because home prices are low, then get surprised by healthcare costs. Or they move somewhere because taxes are low, then get surprised by insurance or housing. Arkansas is interesting precisely because the profile is more balanced than people expect. It is not glamorous. It is not usually the first state named in retirement magazines. But for someone whose goal is to protect purchasing power, Arkansas looks like the kind of place where a modest check has a fighting chance to function like a real monthly budget, rather than an emergency ration. The fifth state is Tennessee, and Tennessee is where this list starts to become more complicated. Merrick also put Tennessee at 90.1 overall, tied with Arkansas, and with a healthcare cost index of 86.4. Tennessee has no individual income tax according to Tax Foundation, and its effective property tax rate is just 0.49%. Those are major advantages for retirees, but then you look at housing and the story changes. Zillow's February 2026 data puts the average Tennessee home value at $327,696, still below the national average, but much higher than Oklahoma, Mississippi, Alabama, or Arkansas. And state averages hide big differences inside Tennessee. Nashville's average home value is about $429,861, well above the state average.
Tennessee also has one of the highest average combined state and local sales tax rates in the country at 9.61%. So Tennessee is friendly in some ways, but not as effortlessly cheap as the first 4 states on this list. That is why Tennessee is really a test of what kind of retiree you are. If you already own your home, or you are willing to live outside the most expensive boom areas, the no income tax structure becomes much more attractive. But if you arrive late to the party and buy into a more expensive market, Tennessee can stop looking like a bargain surprisingly quickly. It is one of those states that rewards retirees who choose carefully and punishes retirees who assume the whole state is priced like a quiet small town. Tennessee can absolutely work on Social Security plus modest savings. Social Security alone is harder, but in the right place, still far more realistic than in the most expensive retirement magnets. The 6th state is Texas, and Texas might be the most misunderstood state on this whole list. On the surface, it looks perfect for retirees trying to stretch a check. Merrick gave Texas a cost of living index of 91.1. Zillow's February 2026 data shows an average home value of $297,592, below the national average. Texas has no individual income tax. Those are all real advantages. But Texas also has one of the biggest hidden costs in America: property taxes. Tax Foundation reports an effective property tax rate of 1.36% on owner-occupied housing value in Texas, much higher than the other states we have discussed. Its average combined state and local sales tax rate is 8.20% as well. So Texas gives retirees a break on income taxes, but it tries to collect some of that relief back through property and consumption. That does not make Texas a bad retirement state. It makes Texas a state where the fine print matters. If you rent modestly, or buy well below your means, or move to a less overheated market, Texas can work very well.
But if you buy a bigger home because Texas feels cheaper than Florida or California, the property tax bill can become the retirement version of a silent leak. You do not always notice it in the first month. You notice it in the 5th year. Texas is still one of the better large state options for retirees who want no income tax and relatively reasonable housing by national standards. But it is not the free lunch people think it is. In retirement, that distinction matters. The 7th state is South Carolina, and South Carolina may be the strongest compromise state on this list. It is not as cheap as Oklahoma or Mississippi, but it is far cheaper than the states retirees come to romanticize first. Merrick put South Carolina at 92.7 overall, with a housing index of 80.6. Zillow's February 2026 data shows an average home value of $300,562, still below the national average. Tax Foundation reports a very low effective property tax rate of 0.47% on owner-occupied housing, and South Carolina's own Department of Revenue explains that residents under 65 may deduct up to $3,000 of qualified retirement income, while residents age 65 or older may deduct up to $10,000 of qualified retirement income. Separately, beginning in the year a resident reaches age 65, they may also claim an age 65 and older deduction of up to $15,000 against South Carolina income, subject to the rules in the state guidance. But South Carolina comes with an important warning that retirees often learn too late. Averages can lie when the hotspots get expensive. Columbia's average home value is about $226,769, which is far more approachable. Charleston, by contrast, is about $581,145. That is a massive difference inside the same state. So South Carolina works best for retirees who like the idea of an East Coast lifestyle, but are willing to be selective and resist the most fashionable markets. That is why I call it a compromise state.
It offers warmth, a relatively low property tax burden, and a more forgiving cost structure than the trophy retirement states, but only if you do not spend like you are moving into the postcard version of South Carolina. Now, after looking at all 7, here is the uncomfortable truth. Social Security alone is still tight almost everywhere. That is the honest answer. Even in the cheapest states on this list, the average benefit is not generous. It is simply less overwhelmed. What these states buy you is not luxury. They buy you margin. They buy you a chance to keep housing from crushing the budget. They buy you lower tax drag on the home, or on Social Security, or on income more broadly. They buy you a little breathing room between your check and your bills. And for a retiree living month to month, breathing room is not a small thing. It is the difference between stability and anxiety. So if I had to simplify this list into real-world retirement types, it would look like this. If you care about the purest budget math, Oklahoma and Mississippi are hard to beat. If you want low property taxes and a warmer southern lifestyle without Florida pricing, Alabama is extremely compelling. If you want a quietly balanced budget state that almost nobody brags about at parties, Arkansas deserves more respect. If you want no income tax and can avoid the hottest housing markets, Tennessee gets interesting. If you want scale, big metros, and no income tax, Texas can work, but only if you respect the property tax trap. And if you want a more classic East Coast retirement feel without jumping straight into Florida-level costs, South Carolina may be the most attractive compromise on the board. In the end, the real lesson is not that one magic state will save retirement. It is that retirement in 2026 is less about chasing sunshine and more about protecting arithmetic.
A Social Security check can still go a long way, but only if the state, the town, the housing decision, and the tax burden all line up with that reality. That is why the old retirement dream is changing. The winning state is no longer always the one with the best marketing. More and more, it is the one that leaves a little money left over at the end of the month. And for a lot of retirees, that is the most beautiful number of all.